Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine drug discovery. Usually takes maybe a decade. Billions of dollars.
Right.
Suddenly, that whole process gets crunched down
Yeah.
into just months.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
We're talking about finding potential new ways to tackle some really tough diseases.
Yeah.
Things like cancer, chronic inflammation.
Autoimmune disorders, too.
Exactly. And doing it at, well, unprecedented speed.
And look, this isn't sci-fi anymore. There's this recent report, Nature Communications, from researchers at In Silico Medicine, and they put out a press release. BioIT World covered it too. It shows AI, artificial intelligence, doing pretty much exactly that.
So they used AI. How?
They used it to find brand new drug candidates, ones that target this very specific, very important enzyme.
Okay, so for this deep dive, that's what we're getting into. What is this enzyme? Why target it?
Mm-hmm.
And, how did the AI find these potential drugs so fast? What does it all mean for medicine for you?
Right. We're pulling the key stuff from those sources, the paper, the press info, to give you the real picture.
Let's start with the target then, this enzyme.
ENPP1, that's its name. It sits on the surface of our cells, human cells. And its job is basically regulating certain molecules, nucleotides, outside the cell.
Outside the cell, so controlling stuff in the space between cells.
Exactly right. And because it's managing these external molecules, particularly one called cGMP, it gets heavily involved with our immune system.
Ah, the immune connection.
And that links it to a lot of diseases. The sources really highlight this. Take cancer. Many tumors actually have way too much ENPP1.
Okay. Why is that bad?
Because ENPP1 chews up that cGAMP molecule I mentioned, and cGAMP is like an alarm signal telling your immune system, hey, attack this tumor. So tumors use ENPP1 to destroy the alarm signal.
So the enzyme helps the tumor hide. It's like an immune shield.
Pretty much, yeah, an immune suppressive shield. That's why blocking ENPP1, inhibiting it, is a really interesting strategy for cancer therapy.
Makes sense. What else? You mentioned inflammation.
Right. If ENPP1 activity goes haywire, it can fuel chronic inflammation, just persistent body-wide inflammation. And it's also tied into autoimmune disorders.
Where the immune system attacks your own body.
Exactly. By messing with those external nucleotide signals, ENPP1 can sort of misdirect immune cells.
Okay, wow. And I think I saw something about tissue hardening, calcification.
Yes. Tissue calcification. If ENPP1 is overactive, it can lead to calcium building up where it shouldn't, like an artery.
Artery hardening. That's cardiovascular risk.
Rig time. So you see, inhibiting ENPP1 isn't just about one thing. It could potentially help with cancer, inflammation, autoimmunity, even calcification issues. Yeah. It's like a central hub for several problems.
Finding something to block that specific enzyme effectively and safely. I mean, normally that sounds like a huge challenge.
Oh, it absolutely is. The standard way, traditional drug discovery, it's famously long, difficult, and incredibly expensive.
Like 5-10 years, you said?
Easily. And costs can run over $1 billion. Yeah. Often much more. And the failure rate is just painfully high. So many potential drugs just don't make it through testing.
Right. And this is where the in silico medicine work, the AI approach, comes in as such a big shift.
A massive shift, yeah. They didn't just speed things up, they fundamentally changed how they got there. Yeah. What normally takes years of lab work, synthesizing, testing, tweaking, their AI platform crunched a lot of that preclinical work down into months. It's a different way of thinking about discovery.
Okay, let's walk through it. How did the AI actually do it? What were the steps?
So the sources kind of break it down into these distinct phases, all driven by AI. Phase 1 was target modeling.
Building a model of ENPP1.
Exactly. Using tons of existing biological data, the AI built this super detailed 3D computational model of the enzyme, especially focusing on the active site, the specific spot where a drug needs to bind, like a high-res digital blueprint.
Got it. Know your target. What's next?
Phase 2, generative chemistry. And this is really cool and very different from just screening libraries of existing drugs.
How so?
The AI didn't just look for existing keys. It designed brand new molecular structures, generated them from scratch.
Wow.
These molecules were specifically designed, computationally, to have the right shape and properties to fit into that ENPP1 active site and block it.
So the AI is like an inventor here, inventing totally new potential drugs.
You got it. Then, phase 3, binding prediction. Okay, now you've got this pool of newly designed molecules. Which ones are most likely to actually stick to ENPP1?
Right.
Machine learning models assessed them computationally, predicted how tightly they'd bind. This let them quickly filter out the ones that probably wouldn't work well.
Okay, so invent, predict binding. What about safety and whether they actually do the job?
That's phase 4. toxicity and efficacy screening. Still using AI models, they took the candidates that looked good on binding and screened them virtually for potential safety red flags, toxicity, and also predicted how effective they'd likely be as actual inhibitors in a biological system.
So more filtering, narrowing it down computationally.
Yep. Getting down to the best of the best candidates, at least according to the AI.
And then came the real world, the lab.
Then came the wet lab, phase 5, wet lab validation. This is critical. The AI points the way, but you have to prove it works. Chemists actually made the molecules the AI designed.
Synthesized them.
Right, and then tested them in real lab experiments against the actual ENPP1 enzyme. And the reports say several of these AI-designed molecules showed high potency. They worked.
That's the payoff, the validation. It shows that AI wasn't just guessing. It led them to actual functional molecules.
Exactly. It bridges the gap between digital prediction and physical reality.
So let's zoom out. Putting this all together, the speed, these AI phases, the validation. What's the big picture significance here for medicine?
Well, there are a few key things that jump out. First, obviously, the speed and efficiency. Taking a complex target like ENPP1, designing novel inhibitors, filtering them, and getting validated hits in months instead of many years. That's potentially revolutionary for how quickly we can even start developing new drugs.
Getting things into the pipeline faster.
Huge.
Huge.
Second is higher precision. Because the AI can model and predict interactions so carefully, the candidates it selects might be inherently more likely to be effective and specific for the target.
Which could mean fewer failures later on.
That's the hope. Fewer failures and expensive clinical trials down the line because you started with a better, more targeted candidate.
And that ties into the third point, I guess, cost.
Directly. Lower cost. If you cut down the initial discovery time, reduce the amount of expensive lab work needed early on, and maybe improve the success rate. It stands to reason the cost of getting a drug candidate ready for human testing could come down significantly. Now, that doesn't automatically mean cheap drugs at the pharmacy counter. There's a whole lot more involved. But making discovery cheaper is a really important piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. Okay, let's bring it back to people. If these ENPP1 inhibitors pan out, what could it mean for patients dealing with these conditions?
The potential is really broad, given ENPP1's roles. For cancer patients, especially with tumors that use that immune shield, an ENPP1 inhibitor might help the patient's own immune system, or maybe immunotherapies like checkpoint inhibitors work better. It could basically help reveal the tumor to the immune system.
Boosting the body's own fight.
Exactly. Then for autoimmune conditions, the idea is that by modulating ENPP1, you might help calm down that misguided immune attack on healthy tissues. Rebalance things a bit.
Makes sense. And the heart health connection.
Yeah, cardiovascular health. If ENPP1 contributes to artery calcification, then finding a way to inhibit it could, potentially, offer a new way to prevent or slow down that hardening process. That's a major factor in heart disease.
It really feels like this could open doors for conditions that are just notoriously hard to treat effectively.
I think that's right. And the really core message, I think, coming out of these sources is how AI's role is shifting. It's not just helping scientists anymore.
It's doing more.
In cases like this, it's kind of leading the discovery, generating the ideas, designing the molecules, guiding the experiments.
It's not just a tool. It's almost like a digital research partner, or even the lead researcher in some stages.
Something like that, yeah. It shows AI can handle these really complex, creative parts of the process, and demonstrating that capability faster, potentially cheaper, more targeted drug development, using novel molecules designed by AI that sets a powerful precedent.
It really could change the whole game.
It points towards a new era, potentially, in how we discover medicines, and maybe even move towards more personalized treatments.
A really powerful example of AI in action in healthcare research.
Definitely.
So, wrapping up this deep dive then, we've seen how AI tackled this really complex challenge, finding promising, totally new drug candidates to block ENPP1. That's an enzyme tied to major health issues, cancer, inflammation, autoimmune problems. And the way it did it, compressing timelines using generative chemistry, it showcases a potential acceleration, maybe even cost savings in drug discovery. This could genuinely lead to new treatments down the road for tough conditions, things that might affect you or people you know.
Yeah, and thinking about that, this whole process, right? Taking a complex target like ENPP1, deeply involved in immune function and calcification, and using AI to find novel potential drugs this quickly, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Wonder what?
Well, if AI can pull this off for ENPP1, what does that really mean for our ability to go after other incredibly difficult diseases? The ones with really complex biology we haven't cracked yet. How profoundly could this AI-driven approach reshape healthcare, maybe globally, in the next few years? What other breakthroughs might be just around the corner?